On the way to a doctor's visit on January 5, 1993, my soon-to-be spouse T fell into a coma and developed a high temperature. We spent the next 8 months with him in and out of comas due to a brain tumor between the right and left brain lobes that was about an inch deep from the top down. Although the doctors thought the tumor was huge, we were unaware of its existence until January 5, 1993. My husband used to be a professional boxer. He worked out every day, ran twice a day, and had a regular job. The only physical change he noticed at home that prompted the doctor's appointment in January was that he was sleeping a little deeper than usual. We ascribed some of our stress to having a new kid after 10 years together, family concerns, his contemplation of retirement and intention to return to school in 1993, and my being wounded in 2 separate car accidents in 1992. The physicians were unable to determine if the tumor was caused by boxing or a fatal infection, which they ultimately diagnosed. T was in the hospital on September 5, 1993, awaiting discharge with full 24 hours nurse and home attendant care. Because of the harmful effects he was experiencing, his many prescriptions had been modified yet again. On the Friday before his death in this life, the physicians advised him to stay in the hospital until Tuesday, September 6th, just in case he had another adverse reaction to the medicine change. Instead of readmitting him and delaying emergency care during a holiday weekend, the doctors could respond immediately if he stayed. T asked me to stay with him in the hospital room the night before, for the first and only time during his sickness. When he was awake, he would frequently request that I return home or to my parents' house nearby before it was too late. We would then communicate by phone throughout the night. I stayed that Saturday with hospital clearance, and we spoke all night. We talked about everything we'd done together up to this point in our lives, and in the morning, we watched a television pastor we'd grown accustomed to watching. Conversations and television viewing habits were both a regular component of our relationship. T had only recently begun visiting churches, so I went to church physically. Between 8 and 9 a.m. on Sunday, physicians and nurses began to visit his hospital room with increasing frequency to monitor the machines he was hooked up to. Around 10 a.m., 2 doctors entered the room and calmly informed T and I the machines had shown a pattern of deterioration that would lead to a coma and, in their opinion, death within 24 hours. I was astounded that the physicians could diagnose, anticipate, and pronounce his death sentence. They spoke to us matter-of-factly about their decision to DNR, or do not resuscitate, or offer medical help. I had always believed that you should do everything under the sun to keep your life going. T opposed extreme measures and backed DNR. He made the decision years ago because of his career and previous family experience. He never wanted to be a living vegetable. In reality, due to a harsh background, he honestly feared he would not live past the age of 30. His entire life, his family had told him this. He took this as a literal fact. He was taken aback when he didn't die on his 30th birthday. T was 32 years old on Sunday, September 5, 1993. Although the physicians asked T about DNR, I was advised that due to his physical condition and a medical proxy he had kept for years naming me as the medical decision maker, I may override his decision. I picked DNR and no drastic steps based on logic. I respected his choice, then excused myself for a few moments to have an emotional breakdown down the hall. Finally, a nurse who had worked with us every day for almost 6 months helped me pull it together by asking if I wanted to spend his final day with him or grieve in the hallway. I gathered my strength and phoned my family, asking them to come straight to the hospital after church at 1 p.m. But not about his death sentence, save to his oldest child's mother, so she could determine how and what was the best way to prepare her child and family. I returned to the hospital room with the thought that he had until 5 p.m. that day. Nobody warned me he was going to die at 5 p.m. At the time, I was reacting emotionally to the circumstance. T was having hard breathing as I entered the room. T was concerned about my condition as my breathing became erratic. He inquired as to how I was doing. He was concerned about my well-being. He even offered to change the medical DNR and risk becoming a vegetable if I so desired. To this day, I'm genuinely affected that, despite his unavoidable diagnosis, he could be so focused and worried about my emotional and physical well-being. I assured him that everything would be all right. I'd be alive later. I assured him that I would respect his requests. He stated that he wanted to preserve his decision while visibly embracing all that was happening. I was sitting on the side of his bed, holding his hand as his breathing became increasingly ragged and labored. His gaze was serene. The medical staff came in and out of the room, checking the machines. I wonder if these were my final minutes or hours on Earth. I reached for the Bible near T's nightstand while holding his right hand. I decided to let it open wherever it would and just kept reading God's Word. What could be more wonderful to hear? We'd already talked about everything the night before. The Bible was opened on Matthew chapter 28, verse 1, which described Mary and Mary Magdalene visiting Jesus' tomb. I could read and watch T's face as his breathing became more pleasantly erratic. He kept his gaze fixed on me until 4 breaths before his last exhale. I was completely aware of how utterly quiet everything was after that breath. As I sat there, holding his hand, I noticed something unusual. I witnessed what appeared to be a whitish, wispy, foggy human form lifting out of a lying down to sitting to lifting form departing his body. It moved upward and diagonally across the corner of the ceiling. "This is wild," I exclaimed. I understood he was no longer inside the human body's shell. There's no doubt about that. I even felt as though I were a part of it. In perfection and joyful calm, everything seen and unseen was linked. T and another entity were also present in the room, located in the corner of the ceiling behind my left shoulder. I had the impression that I could join them. I was linked. T, I sensed, needed to make sure I was comfortable with his going before he could or would leave. I felt the need to reassure him. I was surprisingly at ease with everything. It was more than okay, so I moved my body to the corner of the ceiling and stated loudly, "It's okay. I'm perfectly fine. I'm sure the baby and I will be fine. It's fine if you leave. I assure you that everything is all right." They were still gone, despite the lovely peace. A nurse and a doctor entered the room, turned off the machine, called the time of death, and silently exited. I was peacefully aware of it and amazed at the sense of perfection in everything, as well as the absence of the expected anxiety and loss. His oldest daughter's mother walked into the room a few minutes later. It felt like less than 2 minutes, and my first thought was, "Oh, you just missed him." We sat at his bedside for at least 30 minutes, cracking jokes about who he was. We didn't realize she hadn't stopped at the visitors' or nurses' desks to inquire for his floor or room number until we were approximately an hour out of the building. She had quickly dashed out the door to see the hospital. She knew I was alone that morning. In her haste, she never realized she hadn't requested for information. I've never wished for him to return or questioned his decision to go afterwards. Over the years, I've done my best to share this experience with friends and family. Tonight, I feel obligated to write about it. I'm not sure why.